Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. We are revisiting Doctor Who once in future, one more time, to rank the stories. Nothing much more to say, you know how these work. These are just ranked on personal preference from my least favorite to my favorite. There are 8 stories to get through, and without further ado, let's just jump right in. Starting at the bottom of the list with number 8, my least favorite story in Once and Future, Past Lives, the opener for the series. I really just think Rob Valentine had too many ideas going on in this story, and he just did not have the time to commit to all of them. You know, on top of the isolated story Past Lives is trying to tell, this is also the story that is starting Once in Future, and thus it has to set up the premise of the rest of the series. And I think that because once we have this premise underway, the isolated stories in the following releases aren't, don't have as much of a problem from this. Really, I think the only things that really hold up this story are, again, some of the dialogue and interactions between characters, and just a really interesting performance from Tom Baker. Like I said, this is the story where we see the Doctor first affected by the degeneration weapon, and in that context, with the direction, Tom Baker's not playing the fourth Doctor. He's playing the eighth Doctor. Number 7, A Genius for War. In my circle of Doctor Who fans and friends, and from what I've seen people talking about this, I've seen people consider A Genius for War one of the strongest stories in the series. And I'm sorry, I just can't agree. Like, objectively, maybe quality wise, maybe, but I don't go into stories for their objective quality. I, I'm more of what I'm more of a person who is into emotional engagement. So, like, if the story can connect with me emotionally, I'm into it. A good example. For all my problems with The Angels Take Manhattan, the ending, Amy and Rory's departure, is really good. And that's just my problem with A Genius for War. This story just doesn't click with me emotionally. Especially, and I think part of it too is that it just wastes kind of an interesting idea. We have the seventh Doctor in the Time War. And despite the title, A Genius for War, this story doesn't really want to seem to play into that in any way. Number 6, The Martian Invasion of Planetoid 50. Again, just a really fun story that doesn't just entirely land with me. I don't really have any problems with it. It's just it's just a story that exists, really. David Tennant and Michelle Gomez are the highlights of it. It's one of the few times I found myself actually enjoying the 10th Doctor. And Tennant and Gomez have amazing chemistry. Michelle Gomez, as always, is a show stealer here. The Paternoster gang is a fun inclusion, but it's very clear that this story doesn't know what to do with everyone. And that's kind of a weakness of it, is that it has such a small cast and it doesn't really have a role for all the characters to play. Number 5, Coda, The Final Act. Again, just a really fun story and a really strong introduction for Joe Martin and the Fugitive Doctor at Big Finish. And as far as the anniversary aspect goes, a really fun celebration of the expanded universe. It's just, like I said in my recent video, this one's just held back by not really tying into Once and Future in any meaningful way. Joe Martin, Jonathan Carley, and Lisa Bowerman are all really great. I won't go into my tangent again about how the expanded universe refuses to commit to the War Doctor's characterization, but Carly does give a good performance, and our 3 leads do play off each other really well, and there is some really interesting and fun zany ideas. Number 4, Two's Company. Again, just looking at the opinions of my friends and other people in the Big Finish community, this is seen as one of the weaker stories, and I really don't understand that. This story is really fun. Again, there may be a personal bias because Colin Baker is my favorite Doctor, as you all know at this point. But also, the story is just really refreshing in being so different from what the rest of Once and Future is. Aside from the overarching plot of the Doctor having been hit with a degeneration weapon, all of the stories kind of follow these grand, epic, large scale events, invasions of Earth, destruction of the universe, the Time War, things like that. And just comparatively, this story is so small scale. The inclusion of Jackie Tyler and pairing her off with the Sixth Doctor is particularly fun, and even her interactions with and their interactions with Lady Christina are really entertaining. Michael Maloney as the Two, the newest incarnation of the Integer, is really interesting because aside from the One, he really is the first incarnation of the Integer because he is the first one who was obviously afflicted with this condition. Really, the only thing holding it back is Christopher Naylor as Harry. Harry really had no reason to be here. Number 3, Time Lord Immemorial. First of all, once again, I just want to say it. I like it. It is again so refreshing that we get this big, epic piece of Time Lord mythology, and for once, it's not the Doctor. That is just such a nice change of pace from what it usually is. This story really is held up by Christopher Eccleston, Gina McKee, and David Warner, who, despite how sick he was at the time, really is holding his own and still giving an amazing performance. And again, even though it's not really written like her, this is the most I have ever liked Liv Chenka. Number 2, The Union. The de facto finale of Once and Future, because Coda is more of an epilogue. Again, the way everything just builds up to this story is really well done. Maureen O'Brien is giving an amazing performance as the Union, and we have a really fun team up of the Eighth Doctor, Susan and River. I don't like that after every other Doctor got their own story, Paul McGann has to do double duty with Tom Baker. I really wish this was just Paul's story. But I do like the climax where the Doctor is able to find a way to use the degeneration and access future incarnations, which he also kind of did in Martian Invasion of Planetoid 50 and Time Lord Immemorial. But overall, everything in this story just works. All the groundwork from the previous stories is laid really well, and it builds up to one impressive conclusion that I do think is earned, which with some Doctor Who stories isn't always the case. Some of these finales, their series or just haven't earned them. Once in Future earns the Union. And number 1, my favorite story from Once in Future, The Artist at the End of Time. Again, just a really fantastic story that has a lot to say, and I really like this story's commentary, which is why I like it so much, about the commodification of art. Art more as an industry than anything meaningful, which especially could be an interesting interpretation in this age of AI, which, this particular story, its standard cover, got a bit of heat before it was redone for using AI-generated elements. But Peter Davison and Georgia Tennant are great, but they are both sort of outperformed by Colin Baker as his incarnation of the Curator, first introduced in the Eighth Doctor story arc, Stranded. Overall, just a fantastic, really solid story with a great message. And there you have it, my ranking of Doctor Who Once and Future. How would you rank the stories? Go ahead and start a conversation in the comments below. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload, and in the description box below you'll find the link to my Bluesky where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.